one of the things that I see to be the most challenging thing for entrepreneurs to grip as they're starting is this notion of actually helping somebody else do something is the path to real revenue. Shaun Clark, I appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Definitely. So we were just talking, you said that you are doing the HighLevel event in Dallas right now, which is a shame because I probably could have done this in person with you.
I know. Well, next time, don't worry.
Definitely. I wanted to talk to you and have you on because we have a tremendous number of people that have brought up HighLevel as a platform recently.
Yeah.
And it seems to, it just really hit my radar about a year ago, but it seems to have caught a ton of attention in the marketing community.
Yep.
And I want to dig into that, but just to set some expectations for people, can you give us an idea of size and scope of the company currently, whatever metrics you want to use, user-based revenue, whatever makes sense?
Sure. Yeah. So 27,000, almost 30,000 agencies as we think of them, which are our direct customers, working with around 600,000 or 700,000 SMBs and probably 3 or 4 million users. So that's external, and then and 600 employees today in the company.
Good God, makes me sweat thinking about
small enterprise.
Yes, awesome. So I want to get to HighLevel and not to be confused with Go HighLevel, which is constantly how people refer to it.
That's which we quite enjoy.
Yes, I bet. So synonymous for most people.
That's right.
But before we get to this one, can you give me a little backdrop on sort of your origin story, your background in business, and what brought you here?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a software engineer by trade, but I've always loved. I was always the weird kid. I remember I went to college for computer science. I dropped out eventually, but before that, everybody else wanted to do video games, and I always wanted to create software for small business. And I've just always loved the power of software to impact like the real world and help people. And so I've always kind of been in that lane. And so that's kind of how I got here.
In prep for this, I pulled up your sort of work history.
Sure.
And previously you also did Invoice Sherpa.
Yes, that was my first SaaS company. And then before that, I co-founded an answering service.
Tell me about that.
Well, the answering service was amazing. Not super cool. Like, it didn't get me any dates, or I couldn't really talk about it at parties, but I didn't go to any of them. So that's all good. But basically, it was really this awesome idea. So, rewind back 10 or 15 years, and there was a lot more phone calls going on. And every business misses calls, and they still do. But the reality is that every call missed was a missed sales opportunity. And so by simply putting a human being on the other line, what I saw was this profound ability for someone who didn't even work for that business to radically affect its outcome, and for that to be done at such an inexpensive rate. And really, what we did in that business is we took at the time, no one was working from home. So we did the first work from home for our agents, all in the US, all at a distance. We wrote all our own technology. And so it was really cool because I could see how this really simple concept of picking up your phone could radically change the outcome for a small business owner. And I really fell in love with that idea. And so really kind of moved from there. And then once and I was an 18-year-old kid when I got into that business. And so when there was a lot of things I didn't know. And so when I got out of it, I really wanted to continue in that line. So I started a software company that, again, helped small businesses collect past due money on invoices. And I discovered there how many small businesses actually go out of business because they've invoiced people and they don't get paid timely. And then their bills come due and they get this cash crunch and they literally have to shut their doors over it. And so that was cool. Got to about 1,000 customers there. And then started asking people, well, what else do you want? What else do you need? And they said, well, we want more customers. And so naively, my co-founder and I at the time started HighLevel and thought, well, we can help with that. And so that's kind of how we got to this place.
The beginning. Awesome. Well, let me break that apart a little bit. So first of
Sure.
all, you said that you didn't know everything when you were 18. I thought all 18-year-olds
I
knew
know.
everything.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying I didn't think I knew everything. I just didn't actually. It turns
Yes,
out,
yes.
but that's retrospective.
Jokes, yes. So answering service, what were what's interesting to me and I think important for other entrepreneurs is to know the dynamics of when you called it quits, why you called it quits, how you transitioned, how you started it. So
Oh,
early
sure.
on, you're 18. Did you just
Yeah, so
start
I'm
writing code
18.
or?
I have this strong desire to be an entrepreneur, but I have no entrepreneurs in my family,
Mm,
and I'm really old. So at that time, there's this thing called the .com crash, and I
hmm
was a hotshot, sophomore, freshman in college, going to get my computer science degree, and I'd actually been working already in industry. I worked at a marketing agency of all things, doing full-time coding out of my dorm room, which no other kid at the time was doing. And then all of a sudden one day I couldn't log into my email, and it turns out that they'd laid off half the company because pretty much them and every other company at the time had, pets.com and stuff. Go look it up. It's in the history books, sort of went bust. And so anyways, I was sort of out of the job, and it was literally right as the end of the year passed. It was like summer break, right? So then all the internships were gone. So I literally hit the streets. I was door knocking, trying to find a job. And I figured, well, worst case, I like McDonald's, so I'll end up there if I have to. But I found a guy who at the time was running a long distance company, and back then long distance was this thing you had to buy, yada, yada. You can go look that up in the history books too. But point is, he knew that business was going to die. So he decided he was looking for a business that used his telephony skills and contracts and all that. And he just happened upon answering service. And at the time, it was not a nationalized business. It was, every little city had an answering service. And so he decided he was going to internationalize it. And his whole thing up to that point was he'd advertise in Yellow Pages. And I came along and I said, Yellow Pages, like, what are you doing, man? Like, it's all about the internet and websites and things. And he was, on one hand, he said, well, we could try that. On the other hand, he kind of said, I don't think so.
Well, for
and
context,
so we tried it.
What time period was this? Because Yellow Pages were the thing.
2001.
Yeah, so Yellow
2001-ish.
Pages still were the thing in
Oh, I
2001,
mean,
right?
all of his business at the time. I mean, he had a long distance company with 10,000 customers in 10 Western states, and all of it was coming in through Yellow Pages. So Yellow Pages still worked, right? But I'd seen the power of the internet because the marketing agency I had worked for, what they were doing was at the time it was incredible. They had Oracle and huge customers, and all they were doing is they were doing direct mail, but they would back it up with a website, and they put a contest on the direct mail piece. And at the time, the problem was, you'd be working for Hewlett Packard or something, and they would send out call it 500,000 postcards to every IT person to sell a new printer. And then you had this 5-person sales team, and it's like, well, who do the salespeople call out of the 500,000 people you just send it to? Well, they put a contest on the card, and they'd back it up with a website, and you would go and you'd enter a little code that was on the card to enter the contest. Well, guess what? That also meant, hey, I'm alive. I got the card, right? So that's who you'd have your sales team call. And sure enough, they sold a lot more printers. So anyways, that was their shtick. But I was doing a lot. I sort of understood this idea. So then right as that all happened, AdWords came out. And so I said, look, we need to create a website. We need to run AdWords. And we did. And it blew the Yellow Pages out of the water and really radically created a business that didn't exist. And I think many people had that experience at the time because AdWords was quite new. But for us, and then fast forward 12 years and we had 400 agents in the United States, 200 employees in an office in India, and, I don't know what the figure is, 8-figure business or something. So it became quite large, but,
Got it. But that wasn't yours, right? So that was.
Well, okay. Yeah. So, I mean, sort of, kind of, I only owned 10% of that business.
Oh. Okay, but you were still you got into equity of it.
Yeah, I mean,
kind
of, sort of. I mean, it was a very closely held business, and so what most entrepreneurs or people should know about closely held businesses is that while you want to believe that the value is there, when it's privately held, there's really no way to monetize. And so fundamentally, I got to a point where I really wanted to do more and grow and so forth and so on, and sort of came to a pretty big disagreement with the majority shareholders. And as a result, honestly, basically ended up foregoing 100% of my ownership just in order to kind of move on in a sort of peaceful manner. So in reality, got very little to nothing out of that deal.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there are two things I want to highlight there. One is exactly what you just said, which is the value of something is only valuable in a marketplace when it sells. Everything
Yeah,
else is speculative,
that's right.
right? Real estate value, business value, et cetera. Until you sell that, it's an idea that it's worth something. Um, and I
Yes,
think that's super valuable when you're talking about acquisition or working for equity or whatever.
right.
Um, the other thing that I find fascinating was that you as a kid, right, as an 18, 19, 20-year old, seeing the vision of the internet, that's kind of impressive anyway, but kind of as the coder kid, it's less impressive, right? Like this is your world. You're like, this is
Yeah, sure.
exciting. I'm going to do it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
For the older entrepreneur to see that long distance was going to erode, that buying your vision of the yellow pages, I think that we're in in 2023 in June, we're at another one of these pivotal moments where you have to look at that lesson and think, okay, what are the things that are going to change really quickly, and what industries are going to disappear that
Yeah,
you need to get
disruption.
on top of? Yeah,
Yeah,
100%. And it's a good thing to look at in general, but we've had a few of these inflection points in our lives. It sounds like we're similar age.
yeah.
And yeah, I think that's a cool lesson. So answering service, and then you moved into, from there, did you go into invoice sherpa at that point?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's funny, we're looking back, it's, how sometimes in life, the sort of thing that you think it dooms you and is gonna end the world for you, it turns out to be a great thing. So at the time I want to start an answering service because that's what I knew. Um,
Yes.
but I was barred from doing so by law. And so as a
Non-compete.
result, I had to do something else. And, originally I started a software company that was doing appointment reminders. And I remember taking this idea to somebody in the tech industry locally to me that I really thought was super amazing. And I'd never met him before. I told him my idea and he said, "That's a terrible idea." He said, that's already been done 100 times. And, and I had written all the software and it was ready to go and everything else. And he sort of blew up my dreams. And I remember sitting down and commiserating with a friend at dinner, and they were accountants. And they said, that's interesting. I wonder if you could remind people to pay invoices, because we have a ton of customers who go broke because their invoices don't get paid on time. And I'm like, oh no, who cares? I guess, what are you idiots talking about accountants? But I was like, well, I got nothing else to do. And clearly this first idea is a terrible idea. So I pivoted, and turns out they were radically right. I mean, this is the story of my life, is they were radically right and I was totally wrong, but that's okay. And, thusly turns out that was a huge issue. I connected it to the QuickBooks marketplace, the Xero marketplace, got all my customers from that. I was basically a QuickBooks Online add-on. And every business owner who was an established business had this problem in spades, and at best had a very expensive staff member doing it. And when I automated it through text and email outreach and put a big green button on the email that said pay now and that kind of thing, money just flowed like water. It was amazing how many people, if you just asked them consistently to pay, would pay.
Yeah, that's shocking. So, I mean, as somebody that is deeply, deeply entrenched in payments,
Yeah.
this is all very logical.
Yeah.
So somebody suggests this to you, and you dive in.
Yeah.
This is kind of the third go round, and the question, and I'm going to ask you again with HighLevel, but first with this, with the invoicing, was this sort of happenstance that you fell into it, or why did you pick this vertical?
I didn't pick this vertical.
Got it.
I knew it was small businesses, which I really enjoyed. But I think this is like, I don't know. Like, I've met a lot of people, and I think sometimes I hear people say like how they had this master plan and they had all figured out. They're just lying. I'm just a bunch of big liars. They may have had an idea, no doubt, but the reality is like, just given how many random things happen in life, it's impossible. So if anybody ever says, "Oh, I knew exactly what was going to happen," they're just lying to you. At the end of the day, like, I fell into this, and it was an evolutionary process, and I just listened to my customer, and and just continue to pull the thread as it went along. That's how I got into it.
So to that end, you move up the ladder into a bigger business. I'm consistently challenged with this notion, and I have my own beliefs on it, but I agree that there's this never ending string that you're pulling on, or thread you're pulling on, to see what's next.
Yeah.
How, in your world, how does that align with, annual planning, 3-year, 5-year, quarterly planning? How do you reconcile those two things? Don't believe in it?
Not at all. I mean, it's funny. I'm a big fan of, like, I think it's important to have heroes. And I'm a big fan of Warren Buffett, and Charlie Munger, and I've gone to Omaha, Nebraska to see them at least eight times. And I'll try to go every year until they die, which they're in their early and late 90s, so that'll be soon. But they don't have master plans. They've never had master plans. They don't really believe in master plans. And I feel like if they can do it, so can I. And honestly, just given my experience, I think a lot of people like to do those things because it makes them feel good, but I just think it's utter nonsense. And what's worse is I think it also tends to set your course in a way where you feel like you're compelled to follow a plan, which now could change underneath you. I mean, just look at ChatGPT and what AI is doing. There's no way in the world, and very few people foresaw that. And even the people who foresaw it, I think, got lucky. And so at the end of the day, if you have a plan that now is disrupted by that, what do? Right? You throw that plan away. So what value was that to begin with? I say we plan a quarter in advance to this day. And I would say we're larger than the average. And so I feel like if we can do this successfully, so can anybody. So yeah, don't believe in it.
Super interesting. Okay. So I have to ask to scratch my own itch here.
Sure.
Invoice Sherpa, and you could apply this to any business, but Invoice Sherpa, it looks like you didn't, at no point did you become the actual payment provider. You built the whole thing based on integrations with payments. So, hey, plug in your own payment engine.
The farthest I got was I white labeled payments from a payments provider after integrating 6 of them and just being like, God, these are all the same thing. So I'm sick of doing it. And so I was like, well, maybe I can actually make some money off the deal. So I did find a white label payments provider out of Lehi, Utah, and I did white label them. So I did end up having like Invoice Sherpa payments. And I think I made like 50 basis points. It wasn't terrible. In fact, I still get a check to this day of all things.
And beauty of payments.
Oh, I know. And so anyways, so that was as far as I went. But really what happened in that business was I did something really well and people loved it. And I couldn't figure out what to do after that. And I looked around and there were some people that were doing it at the enterprise level and charging like a god awful amount, but their feature set was literally the same thing. And I just couldn't figure out how I was going to tell somebody, to what you pay now for $49, you should pay $5,000 a month. Right. So I just couldn't figure it out. And then lucky for me, somebody called me up and offered to buy me out. So I said, sounds good. Sold.
Amazing. So no prep towards the potential exit on that. You just had an offer. You know what
it was? It was a cold call from a business broker. And, I had a lot of people call me and say, oh, I'm going to take you to the next level, this and that. So, I was kind of sick of those calls too, but this guy, he had a great pitch. He said, no, listen, just name a price, pick any price you want. I don't care. And just sign my paper that says, if I sell it for that price or higher in the next 6 months, you owe me a commission. And I'm like, okay. And I, at the time, named what I felt like was a crazy price. And I thought, well, I'll never hear from this idiot again. And then the next week he came back with 3 offers, a slightly higher than I had asked for. And I thought, well, that was dumb. I clearly didn't ask for enough. But, I got exactly what I had hoped for. And it was a great deal for me. So, that was a very random situation, but that's exactly how it happened.
I love that. What was the sort of size and scope of that company? Because you started it by coding it out yourself, right?
Yeah. Oh no. So that business was also, that was a great example. That business was like a wonderful example of what not to do. So I initially priced it way too cheap. I think it was $19. And I think when I ended, it might have gone up to $49. And none of those price a minimum. I think I had a $49, a $99, and a $199 or something. But reality was, it was always too cheap. It should have never been that cheap. And what it did is it basically imprisoned me because I never had enough revenue to hire anyone. So I ran the whole business by myself. And I went from coding full time, which I really enjoyed, to talking to customers, which I really enjoyed. But then at the end, all I could do to sort of keep my head above water was talk to customers because it was just too many people and not enough money. And so on one hand, I think I got to 40 or 50 grand a month in revenue, which sounds great as a lifestyle business if you're not killing yourself. And I was killing myself. So yeah, it was really a good lesson of what not to do and a terrible setup for me. So, it was a great experience, but I'm certainly glad I sold it.
Man, I think that that's a great lesson for anybody diving into a new
Oh
business,
yeah,
which is your price point can actually completely constrain your ability to grow outside of just
it does completely constrain. In fact, just speaking as a software entrepreneur, I would never again sell anything less than, I don't know, call it 250 average revenue per user, per customer per month. Because just in reality, if you ever want to make a dime or have big enough team to sort of not take every call yourself, that's kind of sort of where you're going to head.
awesome. At that point, did you have any? So you're solo, and
Yeah,
there's a big gap between sort of size and scope of that product, Invoice Sherpa, and
no
HighLevel.
doubt, no doubt. Yeah,
So I want
no.
this is the fun part, right? So I want to talk about the difference. But before we do, did you have any sense of sort of what metrics you were supposed to be tracking for Invoice Sherpa as a SaaS platform?
Yeah, I was connected to Stripe, and Stripe kind of points you in that direction. I think I found ProfitWell shortly after that, and that kind of thing. And so they kind of throw stuff at you, and you kind of, oh, okay, what's this, what's that, churn and all that. And I knew churn was a big deal, so I've sort of paid attention to that. But in reality, when you're a single owner operator, you're in the business every day. So I was really just thinking, well, how do I keep people happy? How do I do a good job? Do people like the product? I just felt like I just sort of woke up and thought, well, if people like this and I do a good job and they keep using it, I'll figure out a way on the other side to do okay. And I guess that was kind of my North Star. I certainly paid attention to the metrics, but I didn't really think much beyond that.
Okay, and you sold that in 2018?
I think so. Can't remember, but sounds good. You did the
Something like
research,
that.
so I'm sure you know.
Little bits.
Sounds about
little
right.
bits. So HighLevel, you mentioned you have a partner in this. Did you have a partner?
Two partners. I start with one. So it was me and an original co-founder who's still here, Varun. He's my CTO. And then we actually ended up. So originally that business was, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to sell to small businesses. And we started out doing that because I had obviously had a lot of connections through Invoice Sherpa. And but the problem was we would sell the product, and a couple of weeks ago I'd buy and people would cancel. And I sort of take that stuff pretty personally. So I would sort of get on the phone with these people and I would say, what the hell is wrong with you? Are you stupid or are you dumb? And they would say, oh, no. We love the software. It's amazing. We know we need to use it, but we don't have time to learn it. And at the time it was really simple. It was two-way text messaging and reputation management. And I thought, well, I didn't think I'd tell them, if you don't have enough time to figure this stuff out, you idiots aren't going to figure anything out and you're going to get crushed by your competition. You realize that, right? And they'd say, oh, no, we do. But we just don't have time. We got to get back in the van and go, whatever. And so we were really at a crossroads. And so literally in that moment, we got a phone call from this guy named Robin Alex, who ran a digital marketing agency in Dallas, Texas. And we had a co-customer in common. And he said, hey, we got a co-customer in common. I'd love to see what you guys are doing for my customer. And I remember thinking, why the heck would I ever talk to this idiot? He's not even paying me. But he was super nice. And so I was like, well, why would I not get on the phone with a nice guy? So I did. And, and what I learned from that phone call just radically changed my life. And it's a wonderful example of, yet again, where my initial impression of this is stupid turned out to be like, this is genius. And I've just learned every time the more dumb I think something is, the better it probably is, and I should really pay attention. And so what he really showed us was that marketing agencies truly are the sort of unsung heroes of small business success. They are the people who truly learn the technology and implement it and have the time to learn it and become experts at it. And the small business owners who really are out there being successful on their face probably have a marketing agency of some sort or another on the back end actually pushing them along. They just don't tell anybody because then their egos would suffer and they would hate to do that to themselves. So we literally, very quickly thereafter pivoted. I mean, he bought the product. He bought it for all of his customers and it was an awesome experience. But truly, it was more of the journey of, oh, wait a second, let's just sell to the agencies. And that's truly kind of what we did and how that works. So that's how. And then ironically, he worked. This was amazing about him, and it was embarrassing, but he worked for free essentially for 2 years, would travel around the country with me, paid his own way. We never offered him pay. We never offered him equity. We never promised him anything. And it just got to the point where we realized, Varun and I, like, what are we doing? Like, this guy's amazing. Like, it was just, he was so nice. We hadn't thought about it. So we immediately threw equity and awesome. Made him our third co-founder. So that's that story.
So built into that story is the assumption from my end that this is a bootstrap venture, that you didn't take on funding to do that?
What's that? Oh, bootstrap. Yeah, we were absolutely bootstrapped for many, many years. In fact, we've raised, quote unquote, or I guess one round or whatever they say. And honestly, that was just for fun. We didn't need the money. We don't need the money now. We didn't need the money then, but we did it because the market was, I saw the market is highly overvalued, and I thought, I've never done this before. It'd be kind of a unique experience to try. I actually kind of figured nothing would happen. I just thought we'd sort of learn something, right? But turned out we people threw some money at us and for a minority stake in the company, and we still retained control. So we were like, hey, all right, we'll take money. So we did.
How big were you before you decided to take money, and what was the outcome of taking money for you?
I don't know how big we were. We're much smaller than we are now. Probably a third of what we are now, maybe less, a little less, if I had to guess. You can tell I'm really good with numbers, and dates and no. And what was the outcome? Well, I think, the outcome was, what I did realize is if you ever want to do something down the road. So one thing I've sort of learned is that, if there's a system out there, and if you really want to you have to be careful, because if you get into the raising of money too soon, you radically dilute your value. And, I know lots of companies that took rounds at the same time as us at valuations that were so sky high that they'll never see those valuations again. And that puts you in actual big trouble. And in fact, even in our journey, we had people offer us a bigger valuation, which at the time really pumped me up. And I thought, wow, yeah, that's right. I am worth that much money. But what you learn is that becomes your hurdle rate. So if you ever want to go above that, you have to be valued more than that. And so you can get people who will give you a tiny amount of money at a massive valuation, and you basically kill yourself at that point. And because you'll never be able to raise again or sell again, because in order to do that, you have to sell at a larger amount. And, there's all these really crazy things where the people who give you money, they know what they're doing. They're not idiots. And so they'll have downside protection, and they'll have situations where it's like, if you sell lower than X, they get like twice as much money and things, because they're guaranteeing themselves they're going to get the return that they want, whether or not you are ever valued above that. So they're well insulated and protected. And so these are sort of some intricacies I learned as I went along. But so a lot of the outcomes probably were in education. But also, I think we gained some professionalism that we didn't have before. I'd also say we ended up going down a lot of roads that we otherwise had to double back on as well. Because, a lot of it is you get a bunch of certified smart people telling you that you should, do certified smart things, which you never did before. And on their face, they sound really smart. But when you do them, you just really bring along a bunch of people with old records and old concepts that actually weigh your business down and slow you down and start to change your culture in ways that are terrible. So you actually have to, we ended up burning all that down. Like we had to reverse course on a bunch of it, but not all of it. So it was sort of like, some good, some bad. And I think if anything, it prepared us for if someday we ever did want to sell more of the company, we would be able to do that, versus I think if you go too far without some kind of bringing someone else in from the outside and selling some that somehow are like official, you hurt yourself, because the problem is if you get too big, it's hard to then just pop out of nowhere and say, hey, we're worth, $1 billion. You should buy us. And they're like, well, has anyone invested in you before? Has anyone taken that risk on you before? Oh, well, no, we've just been privately held. That's a really scary thing for people who have big checks that they can write, because they're really looking downstream and saying, is there someone like me, but a smaller fish that has already taken the risk that I can use as a gut check, as something I can refer to, because, everybody has a boss, right? And so they've got to tell a story. And if they can't say somebody else is invested in you and you're too big, it actually hurts your valuation. So there's lots of cool lessons there that we learned.
Yeah, I think that there's typically this giant disparity between venture-backed startups and bootstrap startups. And you are a unique one that got to a certain point before they raised. And
yeah,
I've spoken to a number of people that have taken that path, but it's few and far between relative to those other two camps of VC from the beginning and bootstrap forever.
Yeah, I think it's tough because VC from the beginning, you own nothing as you move along, because you're constantly trading equity for money that you're using to keep the lights on. So, and I personally think that's reflective of a poor business model. And I think it's very hard for a tiger to change its stripes. So I think a lot of those businesses get down the line. And there are really big referenceable businesses that are now publicly traded companies where you can go look, and they could be like, I saw one the other day in the payment space. It's a $14 billion company that makes no money. And I think it's a wonderful reflection of how this really works in real life, which is you tell yourself this story like, oh, don't worry, someday we'll turn the model around, or we'll change it, or we'll get, scale and this and that. But I think most of the time that's total utter nonsense. And then on the reverse side, like the bootstrap forever, I mean, if you're going to suck cash out, that's totally possible. But if you're ever looking to not do that and or do work less or this or that, you're really limiting your options. So I feel like that, everybody's different, obviously, but I think these are things you at least should know about as you move through this journey, just so that you can keep your eyes wide open from what you're really, what you're one way or another, you're going to compromise something. So you just need to know what your compromises are.
Yeah, I love that. The I've always historically had that kind of head fuck of how is a VC backed company that doesn't make any money, how is that a functional business model? And
it's not.
Well, but the flip side of that is, Facebook, Uber, like these services.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the problem with that though is you're pointing out the lightning strikes.
Yeah.
And you're calling them commonplace, and that's just utter nonsense, right?
I'm pointing them out and saying, if it is a lightning strike, it still is a functional business model. So albeit a low success rate.
I guess, yeah, but I mean, that's the problem, right? It's sort of saying, oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go get struck by lightning today. I mean, it's possible. It's just not likely.
Okay,
and I think that's the problem with pointing to those things. And also now you're also pointing to very old businesses. So I'd also say that we've seen a market shift, right? And I can't tell you how many businesses have gone bust this year who are on their trajectory, but because the Fed raised interest rates and money, right, and the cost of money went up, they went under. And so so I would say it's even harder to get struck by lightning now.
Look, I agree with you in general, but the devil's advocate of this is that the unique ones, right, still do work. And there are other parallels in life. Like, it's very uncommon to become a top 10 tennis player professionally.
Absolutely. And that's exactly, and that's my point. The point is like, yes, it will happen. Someone is going to become a rock star tomorrow. I just don't know who it's going to be. And, again, I'm a Warren Buffett fan. He always says, I'd rather play a game where the average person does okay, than try to play a game where, you have to be the absolute 1% to win. So for me, I can't play that game because I've never run around saying, oh, well, I'm special. I'm going to be the top dog. Like, I think that's nuts. And I think people who play those games, most of them, they get crushed. And that's why you've never heard about them, because they got crushed.
Yeah, I think those are all good points. And I think
the losers never get invited to the podcast. You never like, hey, so I heard you went bankrupt and you lost it all. Let's talk about it. No one ever invites those people in the podcast. That's a problem.
I kind of want to talk to those people too.
You should. You absolutely shouldn't, because I think that would give a way radically more balanced, view of that journey and help expose, I think, the pitfalls of those models.
You said something that's important though, which is, you as a person don't want to play the game where you have to be the 1% to win.
No way.
But if you as a person are the one that wants to be the 1% or thinks they can be the 1% or the 0.001%, then maybe that is the game you want to play.
Sure.
Right.
Maybe.
I lean in your direction.
The math is not in your favor. I'll tell you that.
I'm a risk analyst by trade and by lifestyle, right? I'm looking at what's the downside and what's the upside.
I highly recommend you do. Yeah. Well, think about the most likely outcome and ask yourself, if you get the most likely outcome, are you going to be happy with that? And if the answer is no, don't play that game.
Yes. I like this. So moving into HighLevel, you slow walked into it. You said, hey, we're going to create a tool that helps people drive more customers initially. And it started
exactly. So we're like, hey, we're going to help the small businesses that we know. We're going to try to meet their objective of getting more customers. And then when that failed, we thought, okay, well, how do we know the tool is good. So how do we get distribution? Because distribution was truly the issue there. And then we found an underserved market and we got really lucky in doing it. And then from there, Yeah, exactly. And from there, we pivoted and said, okay, well, we'll just become the tool for agencies, right? That was the initial idea. And then we did that. And as we went through that journey, then we learned from our customer, there's actually this radically crazy opportunity to actually do what we wanted to do to begin with, but through the agencies. And what that became is this idea, we call it being a SaaSpreneur, but it really became this idea that, listen, all of the software tools that are being sold directly to SMBs, what if the agency could make money by selling those tools, and we could just be the engine and the platform to help them do it? And that's, and that right there is that's like 5 years worth of journey in one sentence or two. But really, that's precisely where we've ended up. So we're really back to the place where we're now serving literally millions of users through our agency partners, and they are doing all the distribution. They're also becoming software companies and making software company revenue, having software company margin. I mean, we've created a business model for them, and this is actually truly at the heart of why we are where we are. It's not that, I'm an engineer. I love software. I love the features like you wouldn't believe. But sadly, I think if we had every feature we have today and twice as many, I think that we would be nowhere near where we are without the model, which is we really are out to try to make money for our customer by creating a product they can sell versus trying to sell them a tool that we just sort of say, I don't know what you're going to do with this, buddy, but just give me my money. Here's your tool.
One of the things that I see to be the most challenging thing for entrepreneurs to grip as they're starting is this notion of actually helping somebody else do something is the path to real revenue. And in your case, you're talking about helping agencies make money. But I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, it's even how can you help your management team be better? And if that's your focus as opposed to way downstream, it amplifies.
I mean, you have to know how you're helping people, because if you don't know how you're and helping is a weird word. I highly recommend you focus on how are you making someone money. Because there's that, who was this? I think it was like what was that? There was like this accounting system. It's like from Canada. I'm trying to remember what it was called. FreshBooks. The FreshBooks CEO once said, there are two types of software. There's crayons and aspirin. And crayons you use to draw like the future and exciting things and everything else. And aspirin, you just take it to make the headache go away. And he said, my product is more like aspirin, which I thought was funny. But I still think that's very true. And I think that when you got to figure out who you are. Are you a crayon? Are you an aspirin? And then from there, like, how are you helping somebody really do what they need to do? So if you're an aspirin, you're really you're about saving money and cutting cost and make like giving back time or something. That's what you do. If you're a crayon, you're making money. And so you really need to very quickly align yourself with one of those aspects and really understand who it is that you're serving and how it is that you're doing that for them, and make sure that you're driving hard as in that direction, and they feel it as much as you believe it.
That's great. What was clearly inflection point one was this decision of focus on the agencies.
Absolutely.
And then you said you've got this 5-year journey to create this product. And I guess it's probably relevant to define what the fuck HighLevel is.
Oh, yeah,
we haven't
sure.
really done that.
Yeah, in fact, this is a wonderful thing. So I actually have now started, this is kind of my byline now. We're we're a CRM or sales and marketing automation suite. And there's a ton of features in there. But what I would say is every piece of technology we have some cool stuff, don't get me wrong, but it's not a feature that you couldn't find somewhere else. That's the most important thing about it. It's not the technology that truly, it's so hard to say this because we have had a rapid development cycle, and without our technology, without our engineering team, we would not be here. So that's super important. But it's weird because it's also table stakes. So it's like, wow, you guys have done a lot in 5 years. That's true. But And I would even say we have more features in one spot than any of our competitors. But even though that's true, without everything else, without the model, without the distribution, wouldn't matter.
Yeah, I think that's a really important lesson for anybody that's looking at how do you amplify your growth. I can also say that you can't ignore the product, right? And you clearly haven't. And what we know inside, so that when our two client bases intersect is at different points, just based on how they run their businesses. Yeah. Sometimes Easy Pay Direct comes across entrepreneurs before they pick a platform to use, or while they're transitioning, or once they're established, right?
Yeah.
And we see all of those things. But in our world, what we hear consistently is that HighLevel does all of the things.
Yep.
And it does them well, right? And so yes, you can find these services in other places, but the fact that you've built this tool set and integrated it into one place is the allure for a lot of our customers.
Our product kicks ass. I mean, we have an awesome product. Don't get me wrong. I'll go toe to toe with anybody in any of our product areas, and as even at a standalone basis, we build this product for quality. I mean, we've absolutely always focused on that, and that's insanely important. And our engineering team is massive, and I hope to make it twice as massive. But I also think I'm an engineer, and so I just think in product. But I think going back and really thinking about lessons learned, I mean, I hate to say this because it really defies everything I grew up believing. But without the model, it's really hard. So I always think of it like this: like if you invent a time machine in your garage, but nobody knows about it, it doesn't matter, right? I mean, maybe let's just assume you can't use it. But like if you don't get the word out, right, It doesn't matter. And I mean, I think of really cool example. Like I'm a huge electric car guy, and I look at like Tesla, and I think, gosh, Tesla existed before Elon Musk. It was a product before Elon Musk. It had promise before Elon Musk, and they had lots of smart people. But really, truly, what he brought, in my opinion, was marketing. I mean, he came in, and yes, he had money and this and that, but he understood this idea of like, it's not enough to make a killer, amazing, world-changing product. You have to get people to love the stupid thing by making it sexy and cool. And if you don't do that, it doesn't matter. And I hate that as an engineer. It really kills me, but it's true. And so I think that's where my lesson for anybody listening who is an entrepreneur in the engineering direction, don't forget the fact that you have to get people excited about what you're doing. And just by building it, unfortunately, not everybody's going to see it, the excitement idea, and come running. So you got to do both.
Yeah. And as a note on that, the Prius was around well before Tesla blew up. And and nobody liked it because it looked terrible. They just missed the mark on the marketing. To your point,
it just wasn't marketed well. I mean, terrible, right?
Terrible.
And they didn't get that, and that sucks, right? And that's unfortunate, and I hate all that. But I mean, it's just something you got to remember, because unfortunately, humans we walk around and say we're very logical people, but we're just lying to ourselves. We're very emotional creatures, and without that emotional draw, there are many things that we won't do. And in fact, the opposite. I mean, how many people do stupid things based on the feeling of it, not on the facts of it? I mean, to say all of us, right? So I think that's something to always keep in mind when you're developing a product. When you're not selling to robots, you're selling to people, and people are very emotional. So you gotta get them at the emotional level as much as the logical level.
So I want to get into some operational stuff here. One of them is you went into a market that is saturated, and you have an angle with it, but this all-in-one marketing tool, and I think I know where you're going to go with this, but this all-in-one marketing tool, CRM, et cetera, there are big players in that space. There are longstanding players. There are some more cutting edge. Yeah, there are heavily backed players. Did you consciously take that on and say, hey, I want to go head to head with this? Did it evolve over time?
No. Because originally, what we believed we were playing in a much smaller pond. You say we're going to be the marketing agency engine. So what are all the tools that marketing agencies need? We'll just build those, right? And there was no one doing this. So because I'm a marketing agency, I've got 20 clients, right? No one's doing multi-tenant. Everybody wants like one license per. I'm logging in, I'm logging out. Like right there, that one thing, super cool for marketing agencies, right? I can just jump in and out of accounts all day long. That's amazing. No one had that. So for us, it was like, we'll just build that tool. No one is doing that. And so that was kind of version one. And so in that situation, we didn't really feel like we were taking on anybody who was established. It was only till later when we got down the road. And again, I stole this from my customers, which is where I get all my great ideas. I would get on the phone with the agencies and they would say, yeah, we're selling HighLevel monthly, to our customer. And I said, like software, like SaaS? And they said, oh yeah. And I kept hearing the story over and over and over again, and they were being radically successful, and people were getting rid of their agency models altogether and going to it. And I thought, oh, this is a great idea. We got to do this. So we just basically stole that idea and then really put that in and said, hey, listen, now you can do it officially. And we gave, kind of all the billing and the rails to do it. And it just took off. And what I realized is the big players you're talking about, their products haven't actually changed that much. because the ideas haven't changed that much. The needs haven't changed that much. And that's okay. These tools have just become a lot more ubiquitous, a lot more standard issue. And now it's truly about, well, okay, cool. I can go to the store and buy, like a hammer and a saw. It hasn't really gotten radically different in the last little bit. But what I still need is a person to actually help me make this stuff do something that I need done, right? That hasn't changed. And so what we realized is that was the missing link. And we met a lot of agencies that were using these bigger tools, and that was the beef, right? They would come in and somebody would have XYZ expensive tool, and they as an agency would have to learn it, they would have to implement it, they would have to make it work. And then a lot of times they would, for all their efforts, they would get fired because the person that they made it work for would think that the software somehow magically did all this stuff and it was cheaper than the person. So they would fire the agency and keep the software. So all of that we discovered over time, and we said, well, let's just fix this problem. Let's let people white label it. So it's their software. Let's let them resell it. So it's their software, so that even if they lose on the services side, they can keep the revenue on the software side. And so, that was the journey. And honestly, what I've come to believe in my heart of hearts is that the way in which software like this will be sold in the future will be in large part a local sale, where you have a local person who comes and sells it to you, helps you get it running, supports you in time, not just on the software side, but also on the services end. And honestly, I think there's a lot of other correlations to other products and services today that are sold that aren't software, that are sold just like that. And I think that is where the larger players will miss the boat. And that's ultimately why we'll continue to grow.
Dude, that's a sort of a fascinating discovery. So the historical, what seems to be the path for most of these larger all-in-one MarTech platforms, and this is true of a lot of spaces now, but in the SaaS space, is build this product and then do some sort of certification where people can charge money and get billables to manage the product for you, because it's gotten so complex and does all these things. And then they create an ecosystem of people that are certified to administer the platform or handle the platform. And the alternate approach that you found was, instead of doing that, let's just tee it up and create a revenue source for somebody that's already in the space, which are the agencies, right? There's no reason to have a secondary group of people here. Let's give it directly to the agencies.
Well, yeah, I think there's this byline of selfishness, and again, it goes back to these failed models. When you raise a lot of money and you got to keep the lights on, you want to scrape as much revenue off as you can. So thinking about a model where you help anyone else make $1 just doesn't come to mind very quickly, because you're selfish. Because if you're not, you can't keep the lights on and you go broke. And so by starting with a different model in mind, we also started with a different end in mind. To this day, I now say I want to be a $10 billion company. And what I mean by that is I want to see $9 billion going into the pockets of my customers as agencies, and we'll do $1 billion. And I think that'll be a wonderful world to live in, because here's the fun, yet again, from Warren Buffett, you don't need to be a billionaire to be happy. And I think you can share with other people and create amazing outcomes in their lives, and be quite happy yourself. In fact, Warren would tell you he knows a lot of billionaires who are incredibly unhappy because they may have made a lot of money, but they did so by denigrating their relationships with their family and even their competitors. They stepped on a lot of people on their way to the top. And now, they may be on top of the hill with a lot of money, but that's about all they got. They have no friends. They have no family. They have no one who loves them. And so, what good is all that money if you have no one to share it with?
Well, speaking of different paths, another selfish itch is we have a full-time development team in-house. And to say it lightly, it is one of the more challenging parts of the business, is managing a software development team. So, and now I'm saying this as a non-technical founder, right? I have a CTO, and I'm not a developer. Now that said, non-technical is the, I think, way that people would describe it, but I'm pretty fucking technical. I just don't write the code. So you now have 600 people ish that are developing. What was the jump like for you to go from, hey, I'm writing the code myself, and now I have a co-founder that's the CTO and writing code also,
Yeah.
to how are things different now with 600 people on the team? And those aren't all
Oh, I mean,
developers, but you
just a
clearly have a big
lot more
team.
structure. We didn't have product managers in the past. We used to have developers just take the features on themselves. So we have a whole product management team that works with engineering managers, and engineering managers have teams and so forth and so on. And there's a lot of engineering leads and all of that. So there's a ton more structure, that's for sure. My visibility into the day-to-day of the engineering team is pretty limited, actually. I actually end up talking a lot more to product managers now than developers. But it was fun because we're all together here in Dallas for this event, and so it was interesting. And of course, we're still cheap to this day. My CTO, so my Robin, who's my other co-founder, he lives in Dallas, so he's staying at home. And then my co-founder and I are at this hotel, but we're sharing a room to save money. And so it's fun because this morning I got to listen to him on a call with his engineering managers, which I never get to listen to, and so that was kind of fun. But yeah, it's just a lot more structure and a lot more of that kind of stuff. But I have the best co-founders on planet Earth, so I mean they make me look incredibly good.
Can you help break down those roles? Because for an 8-figure company that's just starting to develop software, or for a smaller company, or for a like 30, 40, $50 million company that's doing software, whatever, as they get in, what the appropriate roles or the appropriate people that you need for a structure to develop software isn't clear. So what's the difference between a product manager, a project manager, the people that are doing engineering? What are they doing?
I don't know what a project manager is. We don't have any of those people. But product managers for us own parts of the product. So like, it could be the CRM, it could be the funnel builder, it could be the website builder, it could be, it could be whatever. They own that product. And when we think about that means they define, what are the new features going to be? What are they going to look like? How are they going to work? And they work with design to get those designed. They work with engineering to get those, like, to define to the engineer what they're supposed to do. Click this button, it does this, it looks like that, it goes here, it acts like that. They answer all questions, and they're accountable to the customers for that part of the product. So, if they, when I say, well, what are we going to do for the CRM for next quarter? It's not, what do you think we should do? It's, what do the customers want us to do, and in what order? And they're accountable to all of that.
And for clarity, many software development companies have product managers that do that, then have a separate project manager that is the person that handles accountability, that pushes the projects through.
That's what a product manager does to us. That's the other thing, by the way. You got to be careful about the layers. So like, we try to keep it as flat as possible. Too many layers and too many roles and too many this and that, it just causes chaos. So, I mean, our goal is to push as much responsibility into as few hands as possible, and to have very small teams that by themselves operate as a unit and do so independently of other people. So that way they can take action. So taking action is the most important thing. It's almost better to take action and be wrong than because as you get larger, the propensity for people to slow down is radical. Like, and they get scared, like, oh, did I not check, and this and this and this and this. And so the biggest thing we do is fight back against that. It's like, no. You need to take action. You, by yourself, use your brain, make a decision, and move forward. And if you get it wrong, so what? As long as you had a reasonable explanation of why you chose that path, good job. Like, that's what matters here. Not, did you get my approval or somebody else's approval, or get on it. Like, the committees suck. Like, that is our biggest challenge. It's like, you got to fight back against groupthink and committees and inaction at this level.
That's great. You said, I don't care about your priorities, I care about the customers. In
yes.
other words.
Yeah. That is, yeah. We're just insanely customer driven. So we have an ideas list. So this is how we think about ourselves. We are not here to dictate to you. You are here to dictate to us. We serve you. You are our customer. You tell us what you want us to do. And we have a public ideas list. Customers vote on it. It's divided into product groups. Our product managers live off that list. So, unless there's some radical new thing like AI pops out of nowhere, although again, our customers tend to beat us to everything. So when AI is in its nascent stages, they're out there playing with it, and then it's hitting the ideas list. So at the end of the day, like, they really own that roadmap. And we listen to our customers. So we report every day to our customer. My mission is, my job, in my opinion, is to be as transparent about what we're trying to do to serve them as possible. And I make sure that we follow that ideas list as closely as possible and put it out in that priority order. So it's as simple as that.
That's awesome. Since you brought it up, June of 2023, how has AI impacted the way you develop and how do you see it impacting it?
We're rocking AI out in 1,000 different places in our app. I mean, that's how it's impacted us. I mean, we've got AI text generation, AI image generation. We have a AI bot coming out next week. So yeah, we have AI out in all kinds of places, and we'll continue to put it out everywhere we can.
And how has it impacted the development itself, like the coding itself?
Oh, we're starting to actually work it into the engineering teams. So the engineering teams are starting to use like Copilot, which is like a Microsoft product, I think, through GitHub or something, and really starting to experiment with that, because the sooner, if we can code faster, for gosh sakes, we're going to code faster.
Yeah. Has it impacted development or in terms of bringing on new talent? Are you close enough to see that?
To working on what?
So you have 600 people now, right?
Yeah.
Has it yet changed the way that you hire people, right? So,
no, not
okay.
At all.
So because, still staffing up like hell, looking for good developers, same thing.
Yeah. Because I don't know. Great. I think AI is an assistive technology in my opinion. So it should take a great person, make them better, right? Not, but I don't think it replaces people. I think it, and we want to go faster. I mean, my mission is that like we want more, not less. So we're not at the point where it's like, okay, we're fully staffed. We want just let's make everybody as efficient as possible, kind of thing. We certainly want people to be efficient, but I think of it like, all right, everyone's running around with like a handsaw right now. If we can put chainsaws in their hands, let's do it. Let's cut down more trees, but let's also hire a truckload more people at the same gosh darn time. Because more people with more chainsaws is better than the same number of people with chainsaws. I'll tell you that. Cut down a lot more trees. Although I'm from Oregon, we don't like cutting down trees, but it's a good analogy.
That's great. One more question on the development and how you run it. You're a fully distributed team, right? So people are all over the place.
That's correct. Absolutely.
What hours do you maintain for software development?
Well, these days I would say it's 24/7. Actually, we have engineers in every time zone, more or less. We have the bulk load of our engineers in India, just because my co-founder's from India originally. And so technically speaking, I'd say it's more the US nighttime, but we also have engineers in Brazil. And we sort of hire for quality. We don't really hire for location, and it's more of a global world these days as far as that goes. So again, it's for us, we have some tax nexus issues, and we have to be compliant with local laws, obviously, and as you get larger, that's more serious. So you can't just contractor everybody like we used to. But so there's some limitations there, but we don't really think of it that way. And it just ends up that we're in enough countries now where we probably have engineers everywhere.
Dig it. Awesome, man. Well, I have heard nothing but good things about HighLevel as a product.
Thank God.
I love.
I hate when people come on and say, "I've heard it sucks." That's never that. It's like when you meet somebody for the first time and they say, "You're way fatter than I thought you would be." It's just really bums you out.
I know, it happens to me all the time. So I also really like hearing the perspective on how you approach things. So I appreciate you carving out time to talk about it. If people want to, yeah, for sure. If people want to find out more about you or HighLevel, where do you want to point them?
I'd go to the YouTube channel because, GoHighLevel.com is awesome and all that, but it's a landing page. And I would go to YouTube because we've got all the features are out there. All the videos I do every day are out there. We have these awesome spotlight sessions with great, people there. And so you just get a much broader sense, I think, of our world. So yeah, I'd go to YouTube and search HighLevel. We got a great channel.
Awesome. Shaun, I appreciate you carving out time, man. Enjoy the event, man. See ya. Love it. I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I enjoyed doing it. I need your help. There are 3 places you can find Beyond a Million. The podcast itself, beyondamillion.com, which has some cool free resources, including a free course. And we finally launched the Beyond a Million YouTube channel. I would love it if you would go there and subscribe. And if you don't want to, you still would probably enjoy seeing the visual content. Check it out, youtube.com/@Beyond a Million.